I never thought the day would come when my rigid approach to managing ADHD would become the foundation of my success as a leader. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my career, I've been told I'm too structured, inflexible, and unable to adapt to the dynamic nature of working with people who have ADHD. Today, I lead a team of 47 people, 23 of whom are neurodivergent, and we're the highest performing division in our tech company. But getting here wasn't easy. If you believe that our differences can become our greatest strengths in leadership, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about turning perceived weaknesses into superpowers. This journey taught me that sometimes what others see as limitations are actually the exact qualities that make exceptional leaders. It all started 3 years ago when I was working as a senior project manager at TechFlow Solutions. I had built a reputation for being incredibly organized, detail-oriented, and systematic in my approach to everything. My colleagues often joked that I had color-coded calendars for my color-coded calendars. What they didn't know was that this wasn't just my personality. It was how I managed my own ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 28, much later than most people. For years, I struggled with the typical symptoms: difficulty focusing, getting overwhelmed by too many tasks, and feeling like my mind was constantly racing. But unlike many people with ADHD who struggle with organization, I had developed an almost obsessive system of structure and routine to compensate. Every task had a specific time slot, every project had detailed checklists, and every team member had clearly defined responsibilities with regular check-ins. My direct supervisor, Marcus, was old-school management through and through. He believed in flexibility, going with the flow, and adapting on the fly. He constantly criticized my methods, saying things like, "Sarah, you can't manage creative people like robots, and your rigid approach is stifling innovation." But what really hurt was when he said, "You're too structured to ever successfully manage people with ADHD. They need flexibility, not micromanagement." The irony wasn't lost on me, but I had never disclosed my diagnosis to anyone at work. The stigma around ADHD in professional settings made me keep it private. I watched as Marcus promoted other managers who had more flexible approaches, while I continued to deliver consistent results with my team, meeting every deadline and exceeding every target. Things came to a head during our quarterly review meeting. The company had been struggling with their product innovation division, a team of 15 brilliant developers and designers, many of whom were neurodivergent. The team was known for their creativity and breakthrough ideas, but they had missed their last 4 major deadlines, projects were constantly shifting scope, and team morale was at an all-time low. Marcus announced that they were restructuring the division and needed a new manager. I immediately expressed interest, given my track record of successful project delivery. Marcus laughed, in front of the entire leadership team. "Sarah, that team is full of ADHD employees, dyslexic designers, and autistic developers. They need someone who understands their creative process, not someone who's going to force them into rigid boxes. You'd be like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole." The room fell silent. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Here I was, someone who had successfully managed my own ADHD for years and had consistently delivered results, being told I couldn't work with neurodivergent people because I was too rigid. That night, I went home and called my sister, who's a clinical psychologist specializing in neurodevelopmental disorders. I told her about the situation, and for the first time, I shared my frustration about hiding my ADHD at work. She listened patiently and then said something that changed everything. "Sarah, you do realize that your rigid systems aren't rigid at all, right? They're accommodations. You've created the exact kind of structured environment that helps neurodivergent people thrive. You're not managing despite having ADHD, you're successful because of how you've learned to work with it." Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. I had been so focused on hiding my diagnosis that I hadn't realized my management style wasn't just effective. It was specifically designed to support the exact challenges that neurodivergent people face. The next morning, I made a decision that would change my career forever. I requested a private meeting with Marcus and our CEO, Jennifer Walsh. I had prepared extensively, creating a detailed presentation about why I believed I could turn around the product innovation division. When I sat down in Jennifer's office, with Marcus looking skeptical beside her. I took a deep breath and said, "Before I present my proposal, there's something I need to share with both of you. I have ADHD, and I believe that's exactly why I'm the right person to lead this team." Marcus's eyebrows shot up, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, probably thinking about all the times he'd criticized my inflexibility. Jennifer leaned forward, intrigued. I continued, "For the past 6 years, I've been unconsciously developing management systems that are specifically designed to support neurodivergent minds. My rigid approach isn't about control. It's about creating predictable structures that allow creative minds to flourish without getting overwhelmed by chaos." I then walked them through my presentation. I explained how my detailed project timelines weren't micromanagement. They were visual roadmaps that help ADHD minds see the big picture while breaking down overwhelming projects into manageable chunks. My regular check-ins weren't because I didn't trust my team. They were opportunities for course correction before small issues became major problems, which is crucial for people who struggle with executive function. I showed them data from my current team's performance. We had a 98% on-time delivery rate, the highest employee satisfaction scores in the department, and had increased productivity by 34% over the past year. 3 of my team members had ADHD, 1 was autistic, and another had dyslexia, and they were among my highest performers. Jennifer was clearly impressed, but Marcus still looked doubtful. "But Sarah," he said, "creativity can't be scheduled. Innovation doesn't happen on a timeline." That's when I pulled out my secret weapon. Actually, Marcus, research shows the opposite. Dr. Teresa Amable's work at Harvard Business School proves that creativity thrives within supportive constraints, not despite them. People with ADHD often have incredible creative potential, but they need structured environments to channel that creativity effectively. I explained how my systems actually enhanced creativity rather than stifling it. By removing the cognitive load of trying to remember deadlines, track multiple projects, and navigate unclear expectations, team members could focus their mental energy on what they did best: innovating. Jennifer was nodding along, clearly engaged. "Tell me more about how this would work with the product innovation team specifically." I had done my homework. I knew that team's challenges intimately. The current team is struggling because they're experiencing what we call executive function overload. They're brilliant at ideation and problem solving, but they're drowning in project management chaos. They need someone who can provide the structural support that allows their strengths to shine. I outlined my proposed management approach: daily brief stand-up meetings to maintain focus and momentum, visual project boards that made progress tangible, clearly defined roles that played to each person's strengths, and regular one-on-one sessions to provide personalized support and feedback. Marcus interrupted, "But what about flexibility? What if they need to pivot or change direction?" "That's exactly where my approach shines," I replied. "When you have strong foundational systems in place, you can actually be more flexible, not less. It's like having a well-organized toolbox. When everything has its place, you can quickly find what you need when situations change." Jennifer asked the question I had been hoping for. "What would you need to make this work?" I was ready. 2 things. First, I need the authority to restructure the team's workflow and implement my management systems without interference. Second, I need the team to know that having a neurodivergent manager isn't a weakness. It's a strategic advantage. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Jennifer said, "Marcus, what's your objection to giving Sarah this opportunity?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. I've always believed that managing creative people requires a more hands-off approach." "And how has that been working for the product innovation division?" Jennifer asked pointedly. Marcus had no answer. Jennifer turned to me. "Sarah, you have 1 month to show measurable improvement in team performance, morale, and project delivery. If you can demonstrate that your approach works, the position is yours permanently." I accepted immediately. The first day with my new team was both terrifying and exhilarating. I gathered all 15 team members in the conference room and started with something no manager had ever done before. I introduced myself by sharing my ADHD diagnosis. "I know this team has been through a lot of changes," I began. I also know that many of you have been made to feel like your neurodivergence is a problem to be solved rather than a strength to be leveraged. I'm here to change that. I could see surprised looks around the room. Jake, one of the lead developers, raised his hand tentatively. You have ADHD? I do, I replied, and I've spent years developing systems that help me work with my brain, not against it. I believe those same systems can help all of us, regardless of our neurotype, perform at our best. Over the next hour, I outlined my management philosophy and the systems I wanted to implement. But more importantly, I asked each team member to share their own challenges and what kind of support they needed to do their best work. What happened next amazed me. For the first time, team members felt safe to openly discuss their needs. Lisa, a UX designer with dyslexia, shared that she struggled with written project briefs, but excelled when information was presented visually. David, an autistic developer, explained that he was most productive when he could work on focused tasks without interruption, but struggled when priorities kept shifting unexpectedly. Emma, who had ADHD like me, said she had incredible creative ideas but often forgot to document them or lost track of them in the chaos of multiple projects. Michael, who had anxiety and depression, shared that unclear expectations and constantly changing deadlines made it impossible for him to manage his stress levels effectively. As each person spoke, I realized that my rigid systems weren't just accommodations for my own ADHD. They were exactly what this entire team needed to thrive. I spent the weekend creating individualized accommodation plans for each team member. For Lisa, I designed visual project boards with color-coded priorities and minimal text. For David, I established deep work blocks where he wouldn't be interrupted, along with clearly defined project scopes that wouldn't change midstream. For Emma, I created idea capture systems and regular brainstorming sessions with built-in documentation processes. By the end of the first week, the energy in the team had completely shifted. People were arriving early, staying engaged during meetings, and collaborating in ways they never had before. The constant stress and confusion that had plagued the team for months was replaced by a sense of purpose and clarity. But the real test came at the end of week 2, when we had our first major deadline since I took over. The team was working on a new user interface for our flagship product, a project that had been delayed 3 times under previous management. Using my structured approach, we had broken the project into daily milestones with clear deliverables. Each team member knew exactly what they needed to accomplish and when. We had built in buffer time for revisions and unexpected challenges. Most importantly, everyone understood how their individual work connected to the larger goal. Not only did we meet the deadline, we delivered 2 days early, and the quality was exceptional. The design was innovative, the code was clean, and the user experience was intuitive. More importantly, the team was energized rather than exhausted. Marcus was skeptical when he saw our early delivery. "Let me see the quality of the work," he said, clearly expecting to find shortcuts or mistakes. When the product team tested our interface, the results spoke for themselves. User engagement increased by 47%, navigation time decreased by 32%, and customer satisfaction scores were the highest they'd been in 2 years. But what really proved my approach was working came during our monthly team satisfaction survey. Employee engagement scores for the product innovation division had increased from 2.3 out of 5 to 4, 7 out of 5 in just 1 month. Team members were reporting higher job satisfaction, better work-life balance, and increased confidence in their abilities. Jennifer called me into her office at the end of my trial month. "Sarah, I have to admit I was skeptical about your approach initially, but the results are undeniable. Not only has team performance improved dramatically, but you've created something we've been trying to achieve for years. A truly inclusive workplace that allows neurodivergent employees to thrive." She paused and smiled. "I'm promoting you to Director of Neurodivergent Excellence, and I want you to expand your team and apply your methods across other divisions." Marcus, who was also in the meeting, looked genuinely contrite. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I completely misunderstood what inclusive management looked like. I thought accommodating neurodivergence meant lowering standards or being less organized. You've shown me that the opposite is true. that the highest performing teams are often the most structured and supportive. Over the next year, my team grew from 15 to 47 people. We became the company's innovation hub, developing 3 breakthrough products that generated over $12 million in new revenue. More importantly, we became a model for neurodivergent inclusion that other companies started studying and implementing. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. The same rigidity that Marcus had criticized was now being praised as innovative leadership. My ADHD, which I had hidden for years out of shame, had become my greatest professional asset. Today, I regularly speak at conferences about neurodivergent leadership and inclusive management practices. I've learned that my experience isn't unique. Many successful leaders have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other neurodivergent conditions. We've just been conditioned to see our coping mechanisms as weaknesses rather than strengths. The most rewarding part of this journey has been watching my team members flourish. Emma, the team member with ADHD who used to struggle with idea documentation, recently patented 2 innovative features that are now industry standards. David, our autistic developer, was promoted to lead architect and is mentoring other neurodivergent employees. Lisa, our dyslexic designer, won a national award for user experience design. But perhaps the most significant change has been in how we talk about neurodivergence at work. My team members no longer hide their diagnoses or feel ashamed of their accommodations. We've created a culture where asking for support is seen as self-awareness, not weakness. Looking back, I realized that my greatest mistake wasn't being too rigid. It was believing that my differences were something to hide rather than leverage. The systems I developed to manage my ADHD weren't limitations. They were innovations in inclusive leadership. Today, when young professionals reach out to me for advice about managing neurodivergence in the workplace, I tell them what I wish someone had told me years ago. Your brain isn't broken, and it doesn't need to be fixed. The world needs leaders who think differently, who see patterns others miss, and who create systems that work for everyone, not just the neurotypical majority. My rigidity turned out to be exactly what my team needed, not rigid rules, but reliable structures that created psychological safety and allowed brilliant minds to do their best work. Sometimes what others perceive as our greatest weaknesses are actually our most valuable leadership qualities, waiting to be recognized and celebrated. The day Marcus told me I was too rigid to work with ADHD was the day I stopped trying to fit into someone else's definition of good leadership and started creating my own. And that's when everything changed, not just for me, but for everyone who works with me. Because when we stop hiding our differences and start leveraging them, we don't just succeed. We transform entire organizations and create workplaces where everyone can thrive.